Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Diego with another fantastic video for you guys out there in YouTube land. This is your K1 green card live stream YouTube channel. Although this is a video, not a live stream, but I do live streams Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, 6 p.m. Central Time, though sometimes I'll take a night off. And I'm not an immigration attorney. I don't give legal advice. I don't work for USCIS, but this video is about how to understand the minimum income levels for a K1 visa in regards to the green card application. There's a difference between the two. So let's come on along, ladies and gentlemen. Utilize my 13 years experience processing K1 visas and green cards. 13 years I've been doing this, helping people get reunited with their families. Let's get on with the video. Let's get started. Yeah, most of you guys know out there, my wife is from Venezuela. My beautiful wife, Karina, is from Caracas, Venezuela. She came to the United States on a K1 visa, and we got married on the beach here in Florida. And now she's getting ready to process, or apply for, I should say, for her 10-year green card. She got a 2-year green card in about 3 months after we applied. And we had to meet certain income requirements in order for her to qualify. In order for me to qualify to bring her to the United States. Now, the minimum income for a K1 visa sponsor in 2026 is set at 100% of the federal poverty guidelines for the sponsor's household size. You guys know that already. So you're going to have to depend on your household size and how much money you make to see if you qualify in regards to the income. Okay? So for K1 visa cases, which are handled by U.S. consulates and embassies, that serve the 48 contiguous United States and the District of Columbia, consular officers usually look at the 100% poverty guideline, this level, for the relevant household size when reviewing Form I-134, which is the Declaration of Financial Support, which the sponsor fills out and signs, and the original copy goes with the beneficiary to the scary visa interview, right? Now, higher incomes are going to apply for sponsors in Alaska and Hawaii. Why? Because these states have separate federal poverty guidelines, as the cost of goods and services is much higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Why is that? Because they have to import pretty much everything. So it costs more money to buy stuff like food. All right? Now, the K1 visa income requirements are part of the broader public charge framework, which focuses on whether a future immigrant is likely to depend on certain government benefits. So you get adjudicated at the consular interview. The income gets approved at the consular interview, the embassy. Now at the K1 visa stage, consular officers review the Form I-134 to decide whether the U.S. citizen sponsor appears to be able to support the foreign fiancé financially. So you meet the income requirements, okay? So then when the couple then files for a marriage-based green card in the United States with Form I-864, the affidavit of support, the income test becomes more formal and enforceable with the affidavit of support Form I-864. You're signing a legal contract. The sponsor signs a contract with the U.S. government. You're going to take care of your beneficiary. Not the U.S. government's going to take care of your beneficiary. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the U.S. Department of State, and the National Visa Center in New Hampshire rely on the federal poverty guidelines basically as a baseline for making these decisions, okay? But remember, the NVC doesn't have any authority to deny visas. So meeting the minimum income threshold is an important part of showing financial stability, but it is never a guarantee of approval. It's not a guarantee, it's not a sure thing. Officers can look at the overall financial picture, including the credibility of income, the credibility of the documentation, and the sponsor's broader circumstances. Okay, so you may have got permission from your boss to take 6 months off of work to go live with your fiancé in the Philippines while you wait for this process to get adjudicated. For K-1 visa sponsors in 2026, the core requirement is to show income at or above 100% of the federal poverty guidelines for the household size of the sponsor using Form I-134. Although sometimes, very rarely, they ask for the I-864. Consular officers focus on whether the sponsor's income appears sufficient and likely to continue. So they want to see 3 years worth of stuff, right? At a minimum, based on tax returns, pay stubs, employer letters, and other financial documents. You got to prove your income, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Now, the guidelines are different for households in Alaska and Hawaii, because you got to make more money if you live there because the cost of living is higher, as I mentioned. And these income levels are adjusted periodically, okay? So at the K-1 visa stage, the focus is on whether the U.S. citizen sponsor can support the fiancé during the period before permanent residence is granted, which is 90 days as per the dates issued by the Border Patrol on the Form I-94. You got me? So you get issued an I-94, you got 90 days to get married, and you got to meet the 100% income requirement for that 90 days. But when you get married within those 90 days, for most sponsors in the United States, that means meeting the 100% poverty guideline standard for the 90 days. But after you get married, okay, when the couple files Form I-864, which is the affidavit of support for a marriage-based green card, the required income increases to 125% plus of the poverty guidelines. And I say plus because some immigration officers are not happy if you're just making 125% and you're going to need a joint sponsor. So you want to make at least $3,000 or $4,000 above the minimum. For example, right here are some examples of the current 2026 guideline amounts for a couple of a household size. Okay, these are just examples, and they assume the sponsor is living in the contiguous United States, not Alaska or Hawaii. Okay, so if you've calculated your household size to 2 people, 100% to pass the visa interview at the embassy for 2026 at 100%, you got to make $21,150. But Diego says you got to be making at least $25,000. For 125% for the green card application for a family of 2, you got to make $26,438. I say you should be making $30,000 at a minimum to avoid a joint sponsor RFE. If you have a household size of 3 people, at 100% for the visa interview, you got to make $26,800, and for the green card application, you got to make $33,500. That's 125%. But I say you got to make at least $36,000 to $37,000 to avoid a joint sponsor. So these are example figures based on the 2026 poverty guidelines used by USCIS. But you should always confirm the current amounts on official USCIS charts, okay, including the most recent Form I-864 before relying on any specific number. That's Diego's advice to you guys. So now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you have learned that the K-1 visa income requirements are tied to the HHS, Human and Health and Services, federal poverty guidelines, which are updated every year, normally in March, okay, February, somewhere in there. So that means a sponsor who files a Form I-129F for a K-1 in late 2024, whose fiancé interviews at a consulate in early 2025, may be evaluated, or will be actually, under a different poverty guideline chart than a sponsor who is filing, let's say, in June of 2026. Okay? The National Visa Center and the consulate posts follow the latest guidance when scheduling interviews and reviewing Form I-134. And you got to bring the original signed I-134 signed by your sponsor, Mr. Beneficiary. You cannot bring a copy of the I-134. It must be the original form. So many K-1 sponsors are confident about their income, but become uncertain when they start counting household members or trying to decide which income sources are acceptable. Okay, so there's a lot of misunderstandings out there about household size and qualifying for income. So you get confused easily, especially for sponsors with children from previous relationships, self-employment, etc. So don't get confused. Diego's here to unconfuse you. So who counts in a household size for a K1 visa purpose? Who is included in the K1 visa household size? Okay, now household size is more than just the sponsor and the fiance for K1 purposes. Officers look at the same concept used in the I-Form I-864, even though the K1 cases use Form I-134. There's a difference here. 100%, 125%. Okay? The idea is to count everyone the sponsor is responsible for. Who is the sponsor responsible for supporting financially? This is what the immigration is looking for. Okay? Common household members will include, let's say, for an example, for the K1, now we're talking K1 visa here, moving into the green card. The US citizen, the K1 sponsor, right? The foreign fiance, so that's 2. Any unmarried children under 21 living at home or claimed as dependents, like on your tax return. These are part of the household. You don't claim them on your taxes, then you're not financially responsible for them, then they're not part of your household size. And any other dependents claimed on the sponsor's most recent federal tax return, like I just said. So if you have children and you don't claim them, they're not part of your tax return, then don't worry about it. But if you have sponsored any immigrants in the past and you've previously agreed to support them, you are still legally obligated to support them, and they're part of your household size if they don't live with you. So if you're on your second K1 visa, for example, and they're still in the United States, even if you're divorced. So if you miscount your household size, you can cause income calculations to be in error, which is why it is very important you carefully review your last tax return and any prior support obligations. If you're on your second K1 visa and there's a green card holder, even if you're divorced from that person, you're still responsible for them. Common qualifying income sources include, so how do you qualify for this income? Well, wages and salary from a U.S. employer, obviously. So hourly pay, overtime pay, if you got any bonuses or any commissions, those count towards income. Self-employment income, which is reported on federal tax returns, can be included. Even unemployment income must be temporary though. Certain pensions like military pensions, Social Security, retirement income, annuities counts as income. You could have rental income coming from real estate if it's documented and ongoing. You have proof. You can reprove this. You can use interest or dividends from investment accounts if it's reliable and it's a recurring income, like stocks and bonds. Okay, a monthly stipend gets sent to you direct deposit, right? And so how should self-employed K1 sponsors prove their income? Good question. Let me explain that to you. Let me explain to you about self-employment, okay? Documents that will help you for self-employed K1 visa sponsors will include, obviously, your recent federal tax returns. Often they want to see the last one to the last 3 years, okay? They want to see your profit and loss statements. How much money did you make? How much money did you lose? They want to see bank statements showing regular deposits into your account. And they want to see copies of ongoing contracts, client agreements, invoices, etc. This is for self-employed folks, okay? Now, because self-employment income can go up and down, consular officers tend to look at the overall big picture, the pattern, rather than a single month. They look at the big picture of over 1 year, okay? And so what financial documents do K1 visa sponsors need to submit? Well, that's a good question. Most K1 sponsors should be prepared to submit a core set of financial documents that show income history, okay, and current income as of what did you make this month. The documents you can include will be, let's see, the most recent federal tax return. I say include 3 years worth, and IRS transcripts. It's more importantly to show the transcripts. W-2s and 1099s must be included with the transcripts and or 1040s. If applicable, obviously it's going to be applicable if you're working. Recent pay stubs, I say 6 months worth of pay stubs, and an employer verification letter with the job title, the salary, and the start date, when you started working for this company, how much money do you make. You need to show bank statements if needed to show stable income or savings. Okay, so these are some of the financial documents that you got to show to the consular officer and include in your green card application. Consular officers for K1 visas review these documents alongside the form I-134, and they decide then whether the sponsor meets the K1 visa income requirements. So the consular officer has a big responsibility here. Strong, consistent documentation will give consular officers more confidence that you, American citizen sponsor, will be able to support the fiance after he or she arrives in the United States. Okay? Now, not every K1 visa sponsor is going to meet the minimum income threshold on the first try. Unfortunately, right? Some sponsors are still early in their careers. They just started their new job. Others are between jobs. Some have variable income, and it looks weaker on paper than it is in reality. Okay? When income falls below the poverty guideline levels for the sponsor's household size, then the K1 visa case will face additional questions, possible delays, even a denial. So it's important that you have fantastic evidence of your income. If not, get a joint sponsor. At a high level, sponsors who fall short of the K1 visa income requirements, okay, can look at several paths to overcome this deficiency. Although it's not a deficiency, it's just where you are, where you happen to be in your life right now. Okay, you can increase or stabilize income before filing. So don't file your K1 visa till you meet the income requirements. Is one answer, right? You could use a joint sponsor if the consulate allows it. Although I don't think in the Philippines they allow for a joint sponsor. They don't. The U.S. Embassy in the Philippines won't allow for a joint sponsor. Okay? You can include certain household members with income, but you got to prove this with proper documentation. Okay? You can rely on documented savings accounts or assets if you want to, but Diego says probably not a good idea. Probably better to get a joint sponsor. You can explore whether a CR1 or an IR1 spousal visa is a better fit. Conditional residency or immediate relative. You could marry your sponsor, your beneficiary. If a sponsor files with income significantly below the poverty guideline, the consular officer may issue a request for additional evidence and send the case into administrative processing, or just straight out refuse the visa. It could happen.
Are you legal to be in this country? Sí, senor. Okay, I have my green card.
You could end up having your visa denied, so don't file if you're not qualified, financially at least. In some K1 visa cases, sponsors submit multiple forms, I-134s, to address an income shortfall, usually from close family members, friends who are willing to help, etc. So you can use your family members to help you. You can include it as income. These additional sponsors may provide their own tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements, and separate I-134s so the consular officer can see a broader financial support network. That's what they're looking for. However, the U.S. Department of State does not guarantee that consulates will accept joint sponsors in K1 visa cases, and local consular practices varies significantly. Actually, depends on the consular officer. Okay? Some consulate posts are known to be more restrictive and may give little weight to joint sponsors. It could happen. While others consulates consider them more openly. Okay? It depends on what country you're in. The Philippines is very strict at the embassy there regarding income. Assets and savings can sometimes strengthen a K-1 visa application, especially when income is just below the poverty guideline. All right? But they usually play a small role in the K-1 I-134 adjudication than they do in the immigrant visa case once you're in the United States and when you file the I-864. Okay? So for marriage-based green cards, USCIS allows certain assets to be converted into an income equivalency using formulas, okay, that multiply the difference so between the actual income and the required level. But in K-1 visa cases, the reliance on assets is more discretionary, so it's a lot tougher, okay, on the K-1, not so much on the green card. So if you decide to use assets, I wouldn't guarantee that they will help you at the K-1 visa level. At the green card level, sure. So what are examples of assets that may help you? Well, savings accounts with a consistent balance. So you got at least, I would say at least $50,000 in your savings account at a minimum. Certificates of deposit, CDs, or similar cash equivalents, they can help you. Investment accounts with a documented value. So you're into the stock market, etc. Home equity you can use if it's clearly documented and if it's realistically accessible to immigration in the event of unforeseen future circumstances that will means you're going to have to sell your house. Large, well-documented savings or investments may reassure a consular officer that the sponsor and the fiancé have a financial cushion, okay, even if income is slightly below the poverty guideline level. But it's no guarantee. Okay, and if you use your house, you got to prove the value. You have the equity minus the loan on the house. There is no real fixed formula for how officers weigh assets in K-1 visa cases, which is why sponsors should treat assets as a supplement to income rather than a full substitute. Okay, better to get a joint sponsor. Thanks for watching the video, ladies and gentlemen, and we appreciate you, especially the members. If you want to join as a member of this channel, we appreciate you joining as a member. You get my phone number, my email address. You can call me and text me anytime you want, 7 days a week. Just join as a member. Check out my beautiful wife Karina's website. If you want to support this channel, check out Karina's coffee website, not channel. She sells coffee, t-shirts, coffee mugs, bowl caps, ballpoint pens, whatever you can think of. My wife is from Venezuela. She came to the United States on the K-1 visa. She got adjudicated in the K-1 visa process. Took her about 2 years. She got her green card in 3 months. And now we're going to get ready to file for her 10-year green card. And this is February 2026 when this video was made. February 11th, 2026. See you at the next live stream.